It began the moment the ballroom doors groaned open. For a second, no one moved. Champagne froze in midair. Laughter clipped short like a song cut off mid-note. The bride had just made her dazzling entrance, sequins blazing under the chandeliers, every guest rising in polite applause. But when she stepped in, the applause died. Gasps rippled first from the back tables, then whispers, sharp as broken glass, darted across the room. "Is that her?" someone muttered, clutching at pearls. Eyes darted, eyebrows arched. The entire hall seemed to shrink, the grandeur of chandeliers dimming beneath the tension. Sheila did not flinch. Her stride was calm, deliberate, as if she knew the weight her presence carried. Eyes locked forward, shoulders lifted, she carved her way through a sea of shock. At the head table, Thomas lounged like a king, unveiling his cruelest jest. His lips curled into a smirk, arm hooked around his glittering new bride, as though presenting this moment were his victory performance. He had invited his ex-wife here not to honor her, but to bury her in public shame. To him, this grand hall was the stage of her downfall. To her, it was only another room, another gaze to rise above. The crowd leaned in, breath held, wondering how she could stand so firmly beneath such venomous light. Everyone thought they knew how the night would go, but what happened next would change everything. Before we start, make sure to subscribe to our channel, turn on the bell notification to all, and drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from. Before the chandeliers and champagne, there had been two dreamers crammed inside a one-bedroom apartment with second-hand furniture and bills stacked on the counter. Thomas had ambition, yes, but no money. It was Sheila's steady hands that kept the roof above them. Long nights in the hospital ward, double shifts as a nurse, the hum of fluorescent lights her backdrop while she patched together their survival. Every hour she worked stitched Thomas's future closer. She buttered bread so he could study statutes. She counted coins so he could buy books. When the tide turned, it turned swiftly. A law degree, a lucrative case, a seat at prestigious tables. Suddenly Thomas discovered status, and with it, he discovered contempt. The humility his struggle had once carved into him evaporated like mist under sunlight. Whispers from his family fueled it further. "She doesn't fit," they sneered. Her skin, her upbringing, her refusal to bend into pretense, all became ammunition. With coldness sharper than any legal brief, he divorced her under the dull excuse of incompatibility. In truth, it was convenience, camouflage for shame. Sheila did not crumble where he discarded her. Quietly, she rebuilt. Years folded into persistence, graduate school, lectures, papers, students whose lives lit brighter under her guidance. No champagne halls, but full classrooms. No high society galas, but respect rooted deep in community soil. Where Thomas polished facades, Sheila cultivated substance. And so when his invitation arrived, with its golden lettering and concealed venom, Sheila understood exactly what it meant. Back in the ballroom, the air hummed with rehearsed elegance. Silverware chiming, waiters gliding like shadows, the bride's laughter fluttering above the noise. Then Thomas rose, his tuxedo buttoned, confidence radiating like excess cologne. He spread his arms with a performance smile and turned toward Sheila. "So glad you could make it," he boomed, voice honeyed for the crowd, but dripping venom in every syllable. A ripple moved through the room, awed chuckles from allies, tight-lipped unease from others. His new bride reclined deeper into her chair, gaze landing on Sheila with a smirk that burned with entitlement, as though participation in this cruelty were her rightful throne. Eyes followed Sheila's every move as she lowered herself into a chair at a side table. The pianist's melody faltered, conversations dimmed around her, luxury gowns rustled against polished chairs as whispers cut the air. "That's the ex," one said behind poised fingers. "She looks dignified," another murmured, surprised by her calmness. Pity flickered in some glances, derision in others. In that moment, Sheila was both spectacle and scapegoat. Then Thomas seized the microphone. He beamed at the crowd as though about to deliver wisdom. His words struck like darts cloaked in charm. "I'd like to take a moment to thank my ex-wife for joining us tonight, despite what must be her very busy schedule." The pause afterward was deliberate, timed for bite. The implication: she lived a modest, unremarkable life, far beneath the shine of his new world. A crackle of laughter rippled through certain tables, shrill and cruel, the kind of laughter that stings by proving complicity. Thomas's smile stretched wider, smug satisfaction filling his chest as if humiliation were currency and he had struck gold. For him, this was vindication, proof that he had risen above the woman who once carried him. But the camera of the room, every silent gaze pivoted to Sheila. She responded with the subtlest rebellion. She placed her clutch gently upon the table, folded her hands with ease, and let a small, dignified smile curve across her face. Then she nodded, as though acknowledging someone speaking good manners rather than enduring insult. Her calm was louder than mockery. She did not flinch. She did not defend. Her silence painted him as the clown, his arrogance bouncing off her composure like sparks against stone. The hall carried tension like a held breath. Half the crowd confused by her refusal to react, the other half oddly unsettled by Thomas's need for cruelty. Yet what none of them knew, not even Thomas, was who Sheila had become. The ballroom swirled on without her, music layered over laughter, the sting of whispered gossip carrying beneath the chandeliers. Sheila stepped quietly through a side door and found herself on the terrace, the cool night pressing gently against her skin. Below, the city sprawled in glittering constellations of light, towers blinking against the dark sky as though reminding her that the world beyond this gilded cage was vast, alive, and impartial. She drew a slow breath, letting the night air wash away the heat of humiliation. Voices from inside bled faintly through the glass, mockery veiled as laughter, arrogance parading as celebration. Yet out here, there was only calm. The hush of wind across her face, the soft echo of her own heartbeat, a stillness that felt like armor. The doors opened briefly, and a young server appeared carrying a tray. He hesitated when he noticed Sheila standing alone. Recognition flickered, then respect. "Professor Johnson?" he asked gently. His eyes brightened, a student once in her lecture hall. His gratitude was quiet but profound. For a moment, Sheila's gaze warmed. Even here, on a night staged for cruelty, proof arose that her work, her laureate, legacy, was real. She thought not of vengeance. Instead, her mind lingered on the hollowness of arrogance, how fragile a foundation it offered, how often it collapsed under its own pride. Behind her, Thomas danced on glittering shards of power. Before her stretched the silent strength of the city, enduring and steady. And when she finally stepped back inside, the stage for revelation was already set. The night thickened with ceremony, but behind the veil of music and chatter, Thomas sharpened his cruelty. Twice he swept Sheila into introductions, each one designed to slice. To one couple, he gestured casually as though pointing toward a passerby rather than the woman who once sustained his dreams. "This is my former spouse," he said lightly, each syllable dipped in dismissal. No name, no grace, just a comfortable erasure. The couple nodded politely, curiosity tucked behind social smiles, but the sting hung in the air. Later, raising a glass, he pivoted to praise his bride's family wealth, declaring with the volume of a man parading trophies. "It's a blessing," he announced, "to finally join a circle where legacy and refinement run deep." He let the words linger, the unsaid comparison heavier than the champagne in his glass. Subtle jabs about Sheila's upbringing trailed afterward, buried in anecdotes. Jokes about long work shifts, quips about humble beginnings. Each word, small on its own, stacked like bricks in a wall meant to cage her beneath shame. Whispers multiplied. At one table, a guest muttered, "Why would she come?" At another, someone whispered of rumors, that the divorce had been bitter, that race had always been an unspoken chasm between Thomas's family and the woman who once shared his life. Intrigue simmered across the room, heads tilted toward her, studying her stillness for cracks. The hall became a coil winding tighter, every eye feeding on speculation. Yet through it all, Sheila remained quiet. She was no statue. Inside her, emotions roared. But each choice she made was measured, each breath pulled as a decision. She would not rise to his would not scorch her presence with anger. Instead, she observed. Her silence was a blade honed on dignity, her restraint a power that Thomas mistook for weakness. And then, without her effort, truth began carving its own path. The dean of a prestigious university entered the circle, his face lighting when he saw her. Greeting her with warmth, he spoke not of the past, but of the present, her lectures, her influence, her name known in halls of scholarship. A few heads turned, surprise rippled among the crowd. Only moments later, a respected community leader crossed the floor, shaking Sheila's hand with reverence. Their exchanges carried no fanfare, yet weight clung to every word. Guests watching pieced together what Thomas had tried to obscure. Sheila was not a relic of someone's past. She was someone in her own right. And so the balance shifted subtly. Thomas's voice grew louder, jests sharper, his laugh pitched higher, as though volume alone could mask the thinning thread of control. He doubled down, bragging harder of assets, sharper in tone, pretending not to notice the way eyes strayed from him and lingered on her. The harder he pressed, the deeper he sank. Sheila, meanwhile, stayed anchored in silence. She needed no proclamation, no defense. The crowd was beginning to discover what Thomas could never control. Respect earned cannot be stripped by insult. And then, almost inevitably, the truth began to surface. The microphone drifted across the tables, gathering voices weighted with routine blessings, cliches about love, prosperity, and family honor. Each toast gleamed safely within expectation until the dean of a renowned university rose, his stature commanding quiet. Thomas's reluctant nod betrayed irritation, but propriety forced him forward. He extended the mic with a tight smile, pretending generosity while his eyes flickered with unease. The dean cleared his throat, gaze sweeping the crowd before settling warmly upon Sheila. "I cannot resist," he began, acknowledging someone present this evening whose accomplishments are nothing short of transformative. At once, silence descended. Murmurs shifted, tables stilled. The dean spoke with reverence, lauding Sheila's leadership in education, her tireless programs opening doors for underserved students, her policy work rippling through entire communities. He spoke of grants secured, of published works shaping national dialogues, of humanitarian awards quietly gathered while others chased glossier accolades. Shock churned through the room. Faces turned as if they were seeing her for the first time. Heads inclined, eyes narrowed, calculations rewriting themselves in real time. Whispers fluttered again, but now tinged with awe. This was not the discarded ex-wife caricature Thomas had crafted. This was a woman built of intellect and service, impact carried like a crown invisible until someone named it aloud. Across the hall, Thomas's smirk faltered, lips twitching at the edges as the weight of revelation pressed down. His new bride blinked rapidly, her practiced charm cracking into confusion, unsure how to smile while the foundation of superiority slipped beneath her feet. Guests shifted uncomfortably, recognizing the irony. He had designed a night of humiliation, but the only person diminished now was him. Sheila simply inclined her heart. An acknowledgement without arrogance, her silence suddenly thunderous beside the dean's steady praise. She had not uttered a boast, had not plotted this moment. It arrived because truth cannot be buried forever. But the moment that would end all pretense, the true climax, was still to come. The applause after the dean's toast lingered longer than Thomas could tolerate. He shifted in his chair, tugging at his cufflinks, face locked in a smile that grew thinner by the second. Before he could steer the microphone elsewhere, another guest rose, a family friend with influence equal to his own voice, and gestured toward Sheila. "We've heard much about her tonight," he declared. "Perhaps she might offer us a few words." The request hung in the air like a dare, the ballroom walls themselves leaning in. For Thomas, this was supposed to be his theater, his orchestration. Now it asked for her voice. Guests turned expectantly. The bride fidgeted, forced smile faltering. Finally, the microphone drifted toward Sheila's table. She hesitated only long enough to fold her napkin carefully, placing it beside her plate. Rising, she carried her silence with authority. Every step forward deepened the quiet until only the murmuring chandeliers filled the space. Eyes locked on her. For a heartbeat, Thomas believed she might refuse, sparing him from this unveiled challenge. But then she accepted the microphone. Her chin lifted, her calmness unmistakable. "I thank you," she began, voice clear but gentle, not strained, not bitter. Each syllable landed like a stone upon still water, controlled, resonant, spreading outward. "It is humbling to stand here, not as an ornament of anyone's past, but as one among equals." She paused, allowing the words to settle. "Life teaches us, sometimes harshly, that wealth and titles cannot measure a person's legacy. What matters is how we build others, how we carry respect even when we are tempted toward arrogance, and how we stand firm when our worth is questioned." A flutter of emotion stirred the guests. Some leaned forward, goosebumps tracing their arms as her tone laced dignity with undeniable truth. "To lift another amid struggle," she continued, "is the highest wealth. To build hope in those dismissed by society, that is the truest honor. What saddens me most is not the cruelty we endure, but how easily some mistake cruelty for strength. True strength." She glanced ever so briefly toward Thomas. "Requires restraint. It requires humility. And it requires remembering the hands that held you when your own had nothing." The words stung without venom, cut without hatred. She did not rage, did not accuse, yet every listener felt the indictment. Her presence elevated the room with dignity sharper than cruelty could ever pierce. Thomas squirmed beside his bride, his once cocksure grin now a stiff mask cracked by shame. And so she finished, voice steady, eyes sweeping across the hall. Today is not about loss or bitterness. It is about gratitude for what we learn, even from betrayal. Every setback given to us is soil for something stronger to grow. My wish for all of us is simple, that we build legacies measured not by wealth or status, but by the dignity with which we treat even those we think least of. Because, as all of us eventually learn, arrogance crumbles and respect endures. The silence that followed was heavy, charged. Then, eruption. Applause thundered like a storm breaking over the sea. Guests rose to their feet in waves, not out of empty politeness, but out of awe. Some eyes glistened, others nodded silently as though confirming truths they had long felt but never heard voiced so boldly. Sheila returned the microphone with a small, quiet smile and returned to her seat. No bow, no flourish, no expectation of glory, just dignity. Around her, the room still pulsed with energy, hearts struck by resonance deeper than any performance Thomas could script. At the head table, Thomas shrank beneath the floodlights of admiration directed not at him, but at the woman he once tried to erase. His bride's gaze slipped toward the floor. See. Heeks flushed crimson with embarrassment. For a fleeting moment, he felt the chilling revelation. He had been reduced to a footnote in someone else's triumph, and when Sheila sat down, the entire room felt as though the night had been rewritten. The ballroom never quite recovered from her words. Even after the applause waned, the energy lingered, swelling into quiet reverence. Guests began drifting toward Sheila, their steps deliberate, their voices softened by humility. One woman pressed her hand over Sheila's with gratitude. Another spoke of admiration for her work. Young professionals whispered about how they had followed her research. She greeted each with warmth, yet never sought their awe. She simply acknowledged them, meeting eyes with sincerity rather than hunger. Meanwhile, Thomas sat stiffly at the head table, jaw set, eyes darting across the room as if desperate to snatch back the narrative. But the crowd no longer orbited him. His bride's family exchanged glances, their earlier pride curdling into disdain, their appraisal of him altered, their glittering alliance tarnished by the pettiness uncovered. Whispers trailed now in a different tone. Not about Sheila's presence, but about Thomas's cruelty, the arrogance that had exposed itself under crystal light. As the evening thinned, the image of dominance Thomas had clung to dissolved into isolation. He sat among poured champagne and wilting roses, a king without a court, his laughter stiff and hollow. Sheila, however, rose without announcement. She took no victory lap, no performance bow. Instead, she gathered her clutch, thanked the servers with genuine kindness, and moved with quiet steps toward the exit. Outside, the night air welcomed her again. While chandeliers flickered behind her, the city stretched forward, open and alive. She did not bask in her triumph. She simply carried herself into the world with the dignity that had never abandoned her. What lingered after the music faded was not Thomas's triumph, but Sheila's quiet strength. In the hush that followed, when the chandeliers dimmed and the last song drifted into memory, a deeper truth remained. Power built on mockery had evaporated into silence. For all the grandeur Thomas paraded, it amounted to nothing more than scattered applause, already forgotten. His arrogance had revealed not strength, but fragility. True power, the kind that endures, is born of discipline, of patience, of the wisdom to carry oneself with dignity even under fire. Sheila's composure had been her shield, but more than that, it was her proof. No cruelty could strip away what she had built inside herself. She did not need to shout down arrogance or match it with venom. The simple weight of her grace dismantled it more completely than rage ever could. Her presence reminded all who watch that respect cannot be purchased, nor can dignity be stolen. It is earned, lived, and carried within. And on that night, her quiet strength filled the room more powerfully than wealth, family name, or staged pride ever could. Those who rise by tearing others down always fall before the ones who stand with quiet strength. Like this video, subscribe, and turn on the bell notification to all so you never miss an update. And don't forget to comment below what story you want to see next.